Hello and welcome to Coffee Lovers TV. On the show today, we're going to be cleaning the Breville Barista Touch. Now, before I dive into the nitty-gritty, and I will be zooming in on the machine for most of this, but I wanted to go over a few things on what you'll need. So what I'm going to be going through is all of the details on cleaning and maintaining the machine with what you are provided when you get the machine. For the most part, I'm going to be using a couple extra things. You can get really into some cleaning maintenance materials for espresso machines, and I'll touch on that a little bit, but mostly I wanted to approach this from what you're provided with the machine, because they do provide you with everything that you need to keep the machine cleaned and maintained. So first thing, before I dive in, let's go over everything that I'm going to be using, everything that you're going to need. First off, I've kind of divided this into, essentially 4 different parts. In the machine, you have a coffee grinder, and one of the nice things about this machine is that the grinder is essentially separate, so we can clean that as its own separate thing. And then you have the Portafilter and the Grouphead, and all the things that go with this, including the baskets. So I've pulled out the extra filter baskets, which I haven't been using. I mainly just use the 1 2-cup fresh coffee, the large filter basket. And I'll be able to show you this when you get closer, but this is as it has been used. So my tools are reasonably dirty. I do clean them and do some regular maintenance along the way, but you'll be able to see some good before and after on this stuff. And then we have the steam wand, so we're going to go over keeping this clean, and then the 4th section is just kind of the rest of the machine. Okay, so like I said, I pulled out the extra baskets. I also am going to be using some grinds. This is just basic grinder cleaning tablets that I've done other videos on cleaning your grinder, and this grinder is no different. Aside from the fact that it's built into the machine, the only limitation that comes with that is that you really won't be tipping this upside down. I've got some coffee for use afterwards, along with some cups and such. And then most of what you're going to need is actually in the tool tray, which for me actually usually ends up getting stuck back here. It's supposed to attach to this. I'll show this up close in a moment when we zoom in, but in here we're going to find espresso cleaning tablets, a brush for the grinder, a device for cleaning the steam wand, as well as the portafilter baskets. This is for back flushing the machine, and then we have an Allen wrench for the Grouphead shower screen. I actually have extras of these. So everything you need when you unpacked the machine, when you put everything together, the idea is that you took all this extra cleaning stuff and the tools, and you put it into this little tool tray. So you should have everything that you need. Those tools are going to be important for a number of these cleaning steps. The first thing that I'm going to do before I zoom in onto the machine, because you don't need to be seeing all of this, I do want to make this the focus of the video, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over replacing the filter in the water tank. So I've actually already done this. It's really straightforward, and you, especially since you will have put this together when you got the machine, but the water filter in here, filter holder, just comes right out. And then you hold these 2 tabs down to pull this apart, and there we go, water filter. You can order the extras of these on the website. Once you order these, you take it apart, you set the date on here, you put this back together, and then you put this back in there. Now, with that being said, if you're filling this with filtered water anyways, you're going to be fine. Some reasoning for continuing to use these filters. It's just kind of an insurance for continued quality of the machine. I fill this tank with filtered water anyways, so I'm probably fine not using a filter. But I am going to continue using this. I think having the extra filter in there can just add a little extra layer to keep the water clean and to keep you from needing to descale your espresso machine as much. So I've actually had this machine and been using it regularly for over 6 months now, and I haven't done a cleaning on it yet, and it's been working just fine actually until fairly recently, where it became clear that that's been needed. One of the things that you'll discover is that the machine at certain time intervals will tell you it's time to descale. It'll give you a notification on replacing the filter and this kind of thing. It's all built into the system there. So, but that's how you replace the filter. Really easy. So what I'm going to do is set the camera to a much closer view so you can see everything that I'm doing here, and then we're going to go through basic cleaning. I'm going to go through all the details on that. I'm going to start with like the 4 sections, like I said, the grinder, the portafilter and the group head, the steam wand, and then the tray and the body and everything. And do some advanced cleaning as well. There are different options for what you can do. Regular and maybe what you might consider every 6 months or 12 months, depending on how often you use the machine. So because this video is likely to be pretty long, I'm going to link to the different sections below. So if you only want to see like how to clean the grinder or how to back flush the machine, for example, you'll be able to find those links below and skip ahead. All right, so let's get to cleaning. First things first here, we're going to go ahead and take out the tool tray. I just wanted to show this up close. So this is a problem that I actually have. So here's the drip tray. The tool tray is in the back, and usually it's supposed to hook onto the back of the tray here. I'm not sure we're gonna be able to show this, but that lip is supposed to hook into the tray there. It never does. Always comes off for me, but it hasn't been that much of a problem. One thing you do want to be sure of, this is a little bit hard to show here, but if these do get detached, as they seem to want to do, make sure that that is pushed in all the way completely. And part of the reason for that is this hole right here needs to be positioned in a particular spot under here where the machine purges right into the drip tray. And if that's off, then you can end up with, where is it? There it is. Like if the tool tray gets pushed forward, that can end up not in a good spot. It actually might even be this hole that does the purging. But anyways, point is, if that's not pushed in all the way and you run the machine, you run the risk of getting water everywhere. But on the plus side, it's just water and it's easy to clean. Okay, so let's get this out of here and have a look at what we got. The machine will have come with some cleaning tablets. I think I ended up with extras somehow. I'm not entirely sure. I've got a few more. You can order these on the Breville site. I'll link to where you can order those. I'll also point to where you can get something similar. And then you'll get this handy dandy set of tools. This, I think I pointed out at the beginning, important for back flushing. We're going to get to that later. The Allen wrench is necessary for taking out the shower screen that's underneath here. Again, something we'll get to later. And then what we're actually going to be using shortly, because I'm going to do the grinder first, we're going to be using this brush for cleaning the grinder out. So these are the tools that you need. They come in the toolbox. I'm going to go ahead and put this back in here for now, just so that this is all out of the way. Now let's get to the grinder. Let's take that off. Now I've already mostly emptied the coffee out of here. We're probably going to find there's some extra. So turn to unlock this, and then pull out the hopper. The hopper and the top, these can be cleaned just with warm water soap. And now we have a fun little mess to deal with here. So what I'm doing at this point is trying to get excess grinds out of the edge here. They do tend to kind of gather in this spot, like in between here. And what I'm doing for this first part here is getting all the excess out, and then I'm actually going to put the hopper back in. I'm going to run the grinder to try to get rid of this. Get rid of as much of these grinds as possible, and then show you some of the more close-up cleaning, like of the burrs and stuff here, most of which will be done with this brush. But what I will end up using is I am going to run grinds through this. You don't want to do this with a lot of espresso machines that have a built-in grinder. The thing about this machine with the built-in grinder is that the grinder is completely separate from the rest of the machine. So you can treat it like its own little grinder. I'm going to run this really quick to get rid of the last of the grounds, and then I'll be back and I'll show you taking this out. Okay, so I got as much of the excess coffee beans out of here as I could. Now I'm going to take this out. And by the way, power's off while I'm doing this. So very straightforward. We've got this indicator here that's showing at lock, and then there's another note over here, another indicator over here that's about says align, and this is how you okay, there we go. So one thing I'm discovering here is that it's quite challenging, or can be quite challenging, to completely turn this. But this is what you have to do. Turn it all the way that direction, and then this can be pulled out. And as you can see in here, wow, we've got quite a mess to clean up. So let's see what we can do about that. And this is definitely needing some extensive cleaning here. Let's see if I can get all this into that spot. I think this is the case where if this was like a grinder, just a standalone grinder, honestly I would be turning this upside down and dumping the grounds out, but we really don't have that option here. So what I'm doing is getting as much of this out of the way as I can, and then I'm gonna run the grinder again. And in the meantime, I'm also gonna do some scrubbing of these blades. Be very careful, as these can actually be quite sharp, so you can cut yourself on this. Let's see. Let's try to get the grounds off the side there. There's some buildup here. I'm going to try to get off. This seems like an okay thing to do. Seems to be quite effective. But I'm not going to use my fingers in this part. Oh, this seems to be working pretty well. As a note, this is a pretty dirty process here, so be prepared to get a little messy yourself and then have a mess to clean up afterwards. I'm doing this right into here, which is probably not the best idea. I should probably be cleaning this over a bowl or something, but this is where my camera is, so. Do as I say, not necessarily as I do. All right. So I could spend some more time on that if I wanted to be super clean about it, but that's actually pretty good. Like I said, I am going to run grinds through here, so we'll leave that to that. All right. Now what I'm going to do is try to get as much of the coffee grounds that are in here into the center of this burr. Going to give this a little scrub, and then I'm going to put this back together really quick, run the grinder again to try to get as much of this through as possible, and then I'll take it back apart and we'll see how it looks. There are some cracks and crannies in here that appear to have some buildup. So you might want to dig around in there with this brush. Actually going pretty aggressive. There are a couple spots in here where the coffee does seem to have built up. I think it's worth, especially since it's been as long as it has for me, to take a moment, try to get that out of there. All right. Yeah, that seems to be paying off. One thing I could benefit from, which I don't have, is a vacuum with a hose that I could stick in here and vacuum all this up. That would be really great. I do not have anything like that. Okay, I'm going to put this back in really quick. Turns out this is pretty straightforward, since the system has an alignment feature. But let's try to get it seated in there before making a huge mess. Okay. So okay. All right, there we go. You'll feel when it's aligned into the spot. There's grooves on the it's these grooves that are latching in, and you'll be able to see spots on the inside where it's supposed to line up, and then you can just line up this red arrow with the it says align on the inside there. Might not be showing up perfectly on the camera, but in person it's really clear, I promise. And then just kind of wiggle it until it's in spot. We're on lock. That's good. Quite frankly, I could go from here and call it good, but I'm gonna do one round here and check this out. Okay. Let's see how we did. Alright, there's still some like dust on the edges here, you know. I think that's fine. This is actually moving really smoothly now that I've gotten to clean that out. Like, this doesn't even really like snap into place, it just locks. So that was really hard to move before, likely owing to all of the buildup. Okay, so you know what, I'm gonna do just a little bit more. I got most of it out of there. It's probably going to be really impossible for me to perfectly clean this. What I'm going to do though is scrub around the inner burr here, just like I did the outer burr with this brush. Again, be very, very careful. This is sharp. I'm not worrying too much about this brush. It's made for this, but I'm not getting my hands near that. Not aggressively anyways. Okay. I think that gives you good enough idea there. So while I have the camera here, I want to go over a little sidebar. So this is part of the grinder setting on the grinder. If you're not satisfied with the grinder settings in the front panel or on the side, there's the grind size wheel on the side. Like if you're not able to get things where you want them, like you're down as far as you can go or you're as coarse as you can go and it's not quite right, you can change the base grind fineness here. Now I have this is set on 6. This goes all the way up to 10. I believe you can see that on the camera there. And you can see it has this fine and coarse sort of setting to it. Now here's how you make this adjustment. This is actually locked in place right now. Part of this handle actually locks this in place. So if you need to make this adjustment, if, like I said, when you're doing the grind setting on the machine itself, if you're not getting as fine as you need or as coarse as you need, you can come in here and you can adjust the base level. And it starts by, like I said, taking that handle out and then turning this outer ring. It's interesting, as I'm turning this, I'm actually finding that it's a little difficult. So I'm gonna give it a little bit more cleaning. I probably have some grounds shoved in there that's making this a little hard. I can't seem to get it into the fine section. Yeah, I kind of have some ground stuck in there. I'm actually not gonna poke at this too much. I should be able to get where is it? Okay, so here's the grind coarse setting. I should be able to get this all the way to 1 if I need to. That'll make your base grind finer, and going all the way to 10 will make your base grind coarser. So I've been really pleased actually with the grind size I've been getting on the machine as it was. So I'm going to go back if I can. There we go. So I was on 6. All right. So I've matched that hole there. That's 5. You can probably see the 5. That's on 6. So I've matched this coarse setting hole to that number. And now we add the handle back. Put it in this side first. All right, and now push it over into that side. And now we're locked back in place. Back on 6. And now we can put this back. All right. And just like before, give it a little wiggle till it sets down and allows me to go over the lock. And one thing to do is to make sure you can't pull that out when it's in lock, but make sure it's actually over in lock. And now I can't pull this out. So that's locked in place. And now I'm going to run some grinds through this. Okay, now grinds is a very straightforward product. Basically, these are pellets made out of like wood and cereals and such that when run through will soak up the coffee oils. So I'm just going to run a capful through here. They're safe to consume, so what you'll find after running grinds through a grinder is that you end up with a little bit of dust left for the first round, but that's fine. Okay, grinds are in here, and now I'm just going to grind through on all this. Alright, it felt like there was a little bit left in there, and there probably is. Okay, so it looks like there's probably a little bit left in there, but that's all right. When we get to actually grinding coffee again, that's going to clear out anything remaining. So I'm taking a quick look in here, and this looks super clean now, which is really nice. And now we've cleaned the grinder. Now we're going to get to the cleaning of the group head, descaling the machine, cleaning the portafilter, all these good things. That's going to happen right now. Now, what the instructions tell you is that when the time comes, the machine is going to inform you that it's time to do this kind of thing. And the instructions don't tell you anything other than that. Like the instructions in this book just say, follow the directions on here. Now, I've had that message come up, so I'm gonna take you along following the instructions on the machine as we go through it. And then I'm also going to show you, after we're done, where you can find the cleaning process in the settings. So first off, I've actually filled up the water tank. You'll notice on the side, I don't think I need to show this in the video because it's really straightforward on the machine, but the water tank has a min line, a max line, and a descale line. So for this process, you need the water at least to descale, which is higher than minimum. Also, make sure that your tray is empty. I've actually already cleaned my tray, which is kind of backwards for this process, but it was really nasty earlier, so I cleaned it. That's something that you want to be doing on a regular basis, and which I think I showed in the instructional video on this machine to begin with. But okay, so let's dive in. I filled up the water tank, it's on full, tray's empty. So for a brief moment with this video, I've adjusted the camera so that you can see what I'm seeing. So this is the deep clean cycle for the machine. And this should take me through the step-by-step. So I'm going to follow this along. It should ask me to utilize this, which I showed you earlier, and one of the tablets. So this is how we're going to deep clean the machine. But let's see what it tells us. Okay, yep, that's exactly what it does. So we're going to cleaning disc into here, along with one of the tablets, and we're going to lock it into the group head. So I'm just using this like this. So I have seen some instructional videos where they use the smaller of the baskets, but the instructions don't actually indicate that, so we should be just fine. But yeah, the instructions don't indicate that, so we should just be fine to do this. Also, I want to clean this basket anyways. This kind of just fits right in here, our little cleaning disc. I've made sure that this is firmly against the bottom, and then I'm just kind of evenly pushing. I can see how this would maybe work better. Actually, you know what? So I've seen videos where they recommend using the smaller baskets, and the way that this cleaning disc is shaped and my experiences with it, that actually makes a lot of sense. So I am going to put in the smaller basket, and then this cleaning disc will fit in right on top, and then we're going to use one of these tablets. So this actually says to fill the water tank to max, which I've done, so we should be good to go. This is the deep cleaning. What I'm actually going to do is fill it just a little bit more. Okay, so that's in there. I'm going to pop this into place. And before I hit next, I'm actually going to top off the water tank, just to be sure. Since when I turned it on, it ran a little bit of water through. Okay, loading this up with a very full water tank. Okay, so we've done these things. We put the cleaning disc with the tablet in the middle of it into the portafilter. We used one of the smaller, we used the smallest of the baskets. I did not use this basket. This is the one I usually use for making coffee. We'll get to cleaning that later. locked it into the group head, and the water tank is filled to max. So now we're just going to hit next here. And it looks like this cycle takes about 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit stop, and then I'm going to come back to you and go on to the next steps in cleaning. Alright, so the clean cycle's finished. Let's hit that there. And now we're done with that. And just for your reference, if you're not getting the message and you want to do that, you go to the settings here and you go to clean cycle, and that's how you get to what we just did. But after a certain amount of time, it's going to prompt you to do this. So you may have noticed how that process was going through during that, but you can see how it was running through and kind of spritzing off to the sides. So I did grab some cloths. This, by the way, the extra bit of cleaner that comes off makes a really good opportunity to kind of clean the surface of the outside here. You can just take some of that. Why not? Wipe it down. Seems to do a pretty good job. I'm just gonna keep wiping on the outside here. Let's see how we did. Alright, so that's that. Kind of looks like it gathered some bit of coffee grounds in there, so I'm just gonna wipe those out. Take this off. Be careful when handling this kind of thing. After this has been running with heat through it, this can be really hot. It's been a moment, so it seemed to be alright holding on to this. Sometimes I have a hard time getting the baskets out, so I use the razor tool to just pop them out of there. Alright, so that basket was already clean, so that's not surprising. I probably could have done this with the other basket, to be honest. It's a little hard to show, but there's some residue in here, although that process actually cleaned this super well. I'm just looking down inside here, and there's, like, just after the wipe, after the end, this is like as clean as when I got it. So like brand new, really. So that's a really clean portafilter. I think that's just fine. I think it's going to be too impossible for me to show you on the camera here, but I can see inside here through the bottom, and I can see that it's very clean. I don't see any coffee oils. This bottom part here is plastic, and it had a little bit of buildup, especially in the center. There's a bit of a crevice. That part has been cleaned. Just kind of adjusting the camera, but you can see that it's extremely clean on the inside now. Very satisfying. So that's the portafilter, group head, that's all clean. That includes the backflush for the machine. Now, this guy is dirty. I could do that again with this to clean this, but since this is easy to take out, I can also just go to the sink with soap and water. So I'm actually going to do that right now and see what kind of result I can get. Alright, regular old dish soap and warm water. A little bit of moisture left in there. Let's try to get that out of there. But regular dish soap and warm water has given me a nice, shiny, clean filter basket. So don't really need to do anything special to clean these. Just soap and water. Professional, like cafes and such, will make use of stuff like this kind of thing to clean off coffee oils from all of the metal parts of a machine. You're not making hundreds of cups a day, so I don't think you need to do more than what this machine has built into it. Okay, so there's one more aspect to these which can sometimes be a problem, but might not actually be an issue right now. But let's see if we can have a look. So I'm actually trying to see if there's any holes that are clogged up in here, and from what I can tell, and from what I think you can tell, is that that got pretty clean just by, I just did soap and water. So there were actually a couple that were a little bit clogged. And if you did have some that were actually clogged and you're having trouble with them, that's where this guy comes in handy. So this end here is intended for the milk frother, which we're going to get to in a moment. But this other end comes off. So then you can use this to clear blockage in holes if you have any. But what I've found is that, like I said, just simple soap and water works pretty well. So that's actually the major cleaning for the machine. One thing you can do on a regular basis, which I think I showed on the main, like just using the espresso kind of video, is after you've pulled a shot, first of all, you can wipe the bottom of the screen to clean off any grounds, but you can also just do a simple, not even using, you don't even need to use this. Go in here and just run hot water through the portafilter, and that'll help clear grounds that you might have. Obviously we've just cleaned this, so just kind of demonstrating here, but that's something you can do to help keep your portafilter, your machine, clean on a regular basis. I usually do that every time I use the machine or every other time. It's just super easy. So that was the major clean cycle where we use the tablet. The other option that you can do, and that you might want to do on a more regular basis, that kind of major cleaning, maybe you do every 6 months, maybe you do this every couple of months, is to do the descaling. All right, so now we're going to take a look at descaling the machine. Now, scale is something that can build up due to minerals in the water. It can clog essentially the water pipes in your machine, best described as kind of like the arteries of your machine and plaque and that sort of thing. So we use Descaler to clear that up. Here's what I've been told. If you use the built-in filter and you replace that on a regular basis, that's the filter that is supplied by Breville, which you can get on the Breville website. If you replace that every 2 to 3 months, then you shouldn't ever need to descale the machine. This is what I'm told. Now, I personally put filtered water into the machine, so I haven't been replacing that filter regularly. So it makes sense, I think, for me to descale the machine. If I could probably, I actually don't have the filter in here right now. You can use this water tank without the filter. If you don't use it at all, you put in your own filtered water. It's probably a good idea to descale the machine every, same interval as the filter replacement, every 2 to 3 months. I think that if you're experiencing any kind of performance issues with the machine, something's not working right, maybe it's not a bad idea to run the descaling process. Those are just my thoughts. The official word is if you use the filter and you replace the filter at the regular intervals, then you shouldn't need to do this. But it does have the descaling built in. So I picked up this Duragol Universal Descaler. There are a couple other brands. I will link to all of them. This one just seemed to be like a good option. One thing about this descaler, which stood out above the other ones, is they don't use citric acid, I believe it is, which supposedly can cause other issues. But I've been told the Duragol, the Ernex, and there's one other brand of descaler that's escaping my mind right now. These are all good for this machine specifically, so I'll link to them below. But what I'm going to do is just go through the steps with the machine that it tells me, and we're just going to follow that process. So I'm going to switch the screen, get you a little bit closer, and we'll walk through that. Now we're going to go through the descale process. This is a little bit, I'll just say unclear. So the manual for this machine tells you essentially to go into the settings here and follow the descale process. So I'm going to show you this really quickly. Here's the descale cycle. And this actually tells you to use the Breville descale solution. So if you get that and follow these steps step by step, that is the clearest instructional process. I've been told that This descaler and the couple others, which I'll link below, actually work just fine. So I'm not going to follow these directions. I'm going to follow these directions, which say to put 150 to 300 mils of this into the water tank. Now, a little hard to show on the camera here, but I filled the tank up to the descale line. So that actually indicates that you need to fill the water tank up to this level to run the descaling. And then I'm just going to put between 150 and 300 mils of the Durgol in here. The instructions, that's actually giving me a water tank empty error right now because obviously I have that out of here. So I'll show you this on the next page after I set this up, but the instructions say it includes something about using warm water. Using this descaler, you can set it up with cold water in the tank. So that's what we're going to do really quick here. So I'm actually going to be rather imprecise about this and fill up slightly less than, use up slightly less than half of this bottle, since this has 500 mils in it. There's kind of an indentation here. I'm just going to kind of go to there and see what that gives us. I doubt I have a lot of scale buildup, so I probably don't need to use a whole bunch. We got our descaler, we got our water. That did actually put the line up a little bit. I think that's going to be just fine. We'll see how this goes. This says, I'll just read this off to you since we're here, you'll need the Breville descale solution. We know that's not necessary. Allow approximately 10 minutes to complete the entire process. Once I start this, of course, we'll come back to it. So we actually hit start and it gives some more directions. It says, so empty the drip tray, that's empty. If you're using the Breville descaler, the rest of this makes sense. Empty the water tank, remove the water filter is removed. Dissolve 1 descaler sachet into 1 liter of warm water. So that's with the Breville, that's with the Breville descaler. Again, we're doing it differently using this brand. And then pour that into the water tank. So we have that in here. And now we just get started. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. And according to the directions here, so just point of interest, one thing we immediately note is that this is going to splash quite a bit. So we'll let this go for its process and I'll come back to you. Okay, so I wanted to show you what's going on with this. So it's paused in the middle. This was after the first 135 seconds or so. I need to empty the tray, empty the water tank, and rinse and fill to max with clean water, and then reinsert it. So a couple of things. First off, you can see the bubbles and such. That's from the descaler. So it all kind of went through. But I also noticed, this may be a little hard to see on here. Let me see if I can turn this up. All right, so I also noticed that it didn't use all the liquid. So I think I made a little bit of an error in that I wanted the water plus the descaler to be at this line, and it was actually a little bit above, because I filled the water up to here, and then I added the descaler. So just for reference, to that line was about 950 grams of water. So it didn't run all the descaler through, but I think for my purposes, that's going to be just fine. I'm going to follow these steps here and let it run again, and then come back to you. All right, so the process is completed. I learned a couple things going through this process. And what you saw was me doing this actually for the first time. I wanted to show you what the experience is like for anyone who's going through this the first time, which, you know, when you get this machine, you're gonna have that as well. So I was able to discover a few I think important things to note. So the first off, which you saw at the beginning, water sprays everywhere. You will have to empty the tank a couple times during the whole process. You're going to find that water gets under here. No water got into the tool tray, which was nice. Slight spray, that's okay. But you know, some water got down here, and that's all right. You know, you're cleaning a machine, that's going to happen. One very unfortunate, and I will say annoying thing happened. So first off, you saw that when I ran the initial descaling process, it didn't go through all the water. So there was water and descaler still in the tank. Now, from the bubbliness in the tray, it was clear that some of the descaler went through the machine. I'm not too concerned. I don't think my machine is that dirty, so I'm fine with that. But what happened there was initially let me pull the tank out here. I actually have a lot more water in here now. So initially I had filled up the water to the descale line, and then I added approximately 300 milliliters of the descaler, and that took it over the line by about how much it left in the tank. So I think what you need to do, if you want to be sure that the machine's going to use all the descaler in the process, is mix the descaler and the water separately, and then add it so it's just up to the descale line, or maybe slightly less. That was about 950, 980 grams of water going up to that line. So the second, and actually the annoying part that I really do want to point out is, so the first half you run the machine with the descaler in there. As I said, I used this. Then it tells you to empty the drip tray, empty and rinse the tank, and fill the tank to max with clean water. Now that was taking me a little while because I have to filter my water. The tap water in my apartment building has a fair amount of chlorine in it, I think. So it didn't make much sense to use that during the descale process. And I didn't have like 2 full tanks worth of filtered water ready to go before I started this. So I was waiting for the water to filter, and the process reset. I don't know how long it was, maybe just 5 minutes, but when you're going through the descale process, don't leave your machine. The process will reset and you'll have to start over. Very unfortunate that it does that. I guess it makes sense if you were to just leave the machine forever for it to reset eventually, but didn't have all of the clean water that I really needed, and it was taking me some time, and the process reset. So what I'd say to you is, before you start this, make sure you have give yourself a couple tanks of clean water, like a couple tanks worth, to work with. I restarted the process. I ran through it again. I didn't use the descaler the second time. I just ran the process. In the second half, so after you run the descaler, it asks you to empty the tray, rinse the tank, fill it up to max. In the second half, it just rinses through the whole thing, and it asks you to empty the tray, I think, just once, and then it was done. It actually, I mean, I can show you here, it barely used any of the tank. There's still so much water in here. So I didn't actually need to fill it to max to finish this process. That may be different depending on how clean the machine is. I don't know if it senses how much it needs to rinse, but that's just something to note. And then you're done. So that's all I'll say. Bit of a caveat. Before you start the process, make sure that you have a couple tanks worth of filtered water just to be sure, and don't leave the machine alone while it's going through it. If you miss the change, it could reset the process and you'll have to start over again. That's no good. So that is descaling your Barista Touch. Okay, so I've gone into the menu here to the Clean Steam Wand section of the menu, and I'm just following step by step. So to give you the best walkthrough, I'm just going to explain what the menu is telling me. So the first step is to unscrew this tip, and you'll see this on the screen. Very straightforward. Might be able to see there's a little bit of residue around there. I'm actually just going to give this a quick quick wipe with my hand. Not sure what that is. Really hard to show on the video here, but there just feels like there's a little bit of buildup. There's kind of a rubber gasket right there. That was not part of the instructions. That's just something I noticed. Okay, so we've removed the tip. Step 2 is to utilize, might be able to see on the edge, that there's on the end there's a little pin. So you can see that there are 4 holes in the bottom of the steam wand. So we're going to poke the pin into each of those 4 holes. And just make sure that it's all clear and everything. My visual look at this looked like it was pretty clean. Don't actually steam too much milk around here, so that's not surprising. Next step is to remove this cap. Oh, I see. Interesting. So looks like this is intended to do that. And then essentially going to hold on to this and twist this way. So let's see if we can make that happen. Okay, yep, it's working. There we go. All right. So that's the cap. There's the tip. All right, so actually what I did earlier by wiping it down was a little quick. There's actually some more residue here, and what it's telling me to do is actually rinse and wipe this down. So I'm going to go take this over to the sink and do that. Okay, and now that I've rinsed it, might be hard to see, but there was a little bit of milk residue, but it's pretty clean now, and it just took some warm water. Didn't even use soap. Just drying it off now. Okay, so we've done that. We've wiped it dry. Looks pretty good. Now on to the next step. Okay, so now it wants us to check the seals. So checking each of the rings. These all look good to me. If you see any with damage, you may need to replace them. And again, that can all be found on Breville's site. I'm gonna link to where you can find all these materials. Damage to these will definitely affect how the machine froths the milk. Okay, and now we're just gonna reassemble. So I'm gonna use this to hold this part in place and just make sure that screws back in completely. That came to a stop pretty easily, so I'm not gonna do any more with it. All right. So it does say over tightening can damage the seals, so yeah, you don't want to do that. And now we're gonna put this back in here. Okay. Again, don't need to over tighten. All right, and now it wants to rinse the steam wand. It actually just says start to rinse the steam wand. It says 11 seconds, so I'm just gonna run this and see what happens. And cleaning is completed. That's it. That's cleaning the steam wand. The last part of cleaning the machine is the outside, which is pretty straightforward. So actually, if you did the cleaning cycle, the major cleaning cycle with the tablet, then you will have seen that I was able to actually clean this entire area with what was left over from that. That worked out pretty well. You can also just use, like, I've got a microfiber cloth here, and there's some, like, a little bit of coffee residue here, and the outside just wipes off really easily with this kind of thing. They caution you in the instructions about using anything abrasive or any other cleaners and whatnot, and I think that's just their way of being careful about what to recommend in case you like accidentally scratch the surface. I mean, that's plastic, this is metal. I mean, over time you're gonna get like signs of use, and that's just unavoidable. There's nothing you can do about that. This is why I like microfiber cloths, because now the tamper's clean. That was easy. Everything else, you know, you might take a warm damp cloth to the outside of the steam wand, but that cleans pretty easily. The top part here, I actually have some bunch of coffee grounds from when I was cleaning the grinder still up there. I'm not going to worry about that. And I do need to empty and clean the tray here, because this got full with the cleaning cycle. But this is really straightforward. When you're washing this, warm soap and water. Don't put any of this in the dishwasher. You don't need to do anything except warm water, soap, sponge, and then let it dry. It's really straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and empty this out and give it a quick rinse. Okay, I think it's definitely preferable to let this dry before putting it together like this, but I'm a little impatient. I want to get to actually making some coffee. So, yeah, the outside of this is looking pretty good. And now we're pretty clean. One thing to note, if you went through and you did the grinder cleaning like I did, if you used grinds to run through here, then what you might want to do is run a little bit of coffee through first. I'm actually going to do that. I've got some coffee to use here. So I'm not going to run a whole lot through. What I did notice is that there was a little bit of grinds left in there. If you do get some of that in your first couple of shots, totally fine. It's not going to hurt you. It might affect the taste of your coffee slightly, but to me, I think it's worth it to get a clean machine. So let's go ahead and pull a shot. So I actually have this. I'm going to turn this down 7. So I'm kind of guessing at the settings here. This is a new coffee, so I don't know how this is going to come out. But let's find out. I'm not doing anything too crazy, but this is about what I found to be good for the kind of roast that I'm using. And that's just the way my machine is set. If you check out the grinder cleaning section of this, you'll see that there is a base setting for the burrs, which will affect how this works for you. So my 7 on here may be completely different for you if the base burr setting is different on your machine. So go check out the grinder cleaning section. You'll see a link to that below for this video, and you'll see in that section how to adjust the base grind size setting. Very important. Check it out. All right. So good amount of coffee. Let's see what happens. That's just about when it should start, so it looks like we're pulling a good shot. Everything's coming out smooth. That's exactly what we want. I'm actually going to stop it right there. Let's see how we did. That's a good cup of coffee. All the processes that I've used to clean here are what you can do with this machine out of the box. Aside from the grinds, which I'll link below, you don't need to use these. They will help get your grinder much cleaner than not using something like that. So I think it's worth doing. Okay, and since I did pull a shot here, let's go ahead and get that puck out. And then I'm going to show you one of the really basic ways to clean this thing right after you brew, which I showed before, is just put that right back in there and then run that for a few seconds. You'll find that that gets dirty. What I'm going to do actually is go run this in the sink really quick. And now, clean portafilter, basic post-brew cleaning. If you want to be super thorough, take out the basket after each time you've used it, wash that out, dry this out. You can set these to dry, and you'll be good to go. All right, so that's been cleaning and maintaining the Breville Barista Touch. If you have any questions about any of this, any comments, please leave your questions and comments below. If I don't know the answer to something, I'll find it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.